Is there power creep in HSR? Is it bad? This topic is pretty divisive, but there are two main types of players: the broke free-to-play kid. HSR power creep is too quick. I can't enjoy the new units and have fun in the endgame long enough. They become irrelevant too quickly, and I always feel underpowered. The meta slave gigachant. Power creep affecting you is your fault. You should have pulled for the right units, and you wouldn't have any problems. Don't expect to get your waifu and be good in the endgame. Just pull for the meta. I live under a rock. I check Twitter like once a week, and news usually don't reach me. However, HSR power creep drama was so big that even I am aware of it. That I've had some thoughts on gacha and power creep for a while, and I was inspired to finally organize them into something hopefully more or less cohesive. It is not a direct reply to any of the participants in the original discussion, just a sum of my thoughts on the topic. To preface this, I've been playing HSR since release. I've recently taken a little break after my terrible gacha luck screwed me over again, but I intend to come back to see what they are gonna do with the Flame Chaser story in this universe. Of course, the gacha model by itself is already deeply messed up and predatory by design. Because it is basically gambling, it takes advantage of people with bad impulse control and can easily lead them to financial ruin. However, it depends on the company to which extent they want to take advantage of this model. They decide how many pulls you need for the guaranteed, how many pulls you get in the game, how much grinding you need to get these pulls, how much FOMO they want to implement, and how fast the power creep is going to be. So there are degrees to how predatory a gacha game is. It might be pretty chill and free-to-play friendly, it might be a game that only whales can enjoy, and there are many variations in between. So where does HSR lie on this spectrum? And why do so many players have problems with power creep in this game? Is this a skill issue? Is this a real issue in the game? Is this a little bit of both, maybe? I think in its present state, HSR is starting to move uncomfortably close towards the whale territory, and I'll try to explain why I have this opinion. First and foremost, when somebody talks about skill issue in HSR of all games, it's just funny. HSR is a pretty casual game. What you need is not skill, it's more about understanding the principles of team building and character synergy and using them in challenges. Which is not very hard, since every character only has like 3 abilities and probably some passives that you need to consider. And there are not that many team archetypes. And of course, luck is very important too, since you need good substats on your relics, which means you will need to spend copious amounts of time in the Cavern of Scab. So it's not a skill-intensive game at all. Of course, there are some players who put random bullshit into their teams and act all surprised when they can't clear anything. And there are those who pull for new DPS but ignore supports that make them relevant in the first place. And those who have no idea that they have to level up and build characters. But I don't think that everyone who complains about power creep is like that. Plus, missing some key units might be just the matter of bad luck, not the player being stupid or not pulling for the right characters. So it is not purely a skill issue. Power creep has existed in HSR since its first year. For example, Blade lost his relevance by his first rerun. His damage numbers were just underwhelming in comparison to other DPS units, and this is not great. With Blade it was a little too quick to my liking, but at the same time there were some units that were consistently strong throughout the whole version 1. However, this gradual power creep is pretty normal for gacha games, and it was expected in HSR, a game that doesn't have that much of a skill ceiling and that has a limited potential for introducing new gameplay styles. So we assume that we cannot escape power creep in any way, shape or form. It can be done reasonably, it can be slow enough for most players to keep up. You could expect that the old teams would slowly fade into obscurity, but you could still make them relevant for longer with vertical investment. Even within the framework of inevitable power creep, I think it was reasonable to expect that the DPS units that we had back then, like Jin Liu and Imbibitor Lune, would stay relevant for at least a year or even a little bit longer after their release, and supports will have even a longer shelf life, and then they would gradually fade from the meta, but we will have ample time to build new units. However, they were power creep much faster and much harder than we could expect. They didn't even last a year. Everything changed in Penacony. This was the point when Horrors went too far and started introducing absurdly broken characters. Horrors decided to start breaking their game balance and old gameplay principles they set on release. Like Weakness Break, for example. You were supposed to have characters of a specific element type to break the enemy's weakness. But in version 2 they started adding more characters that can ignore weakness types, or implant their own weakness on the enemy. So they basically added a bunch of DPS characters that powercrept Silverwolf. By this magic alone, they are well above older units, since they can be more efficient even when there are enemies on the field that are not covered by your team's element types. And then Horrors just decided to super break their game balance. The super break meta allows to dish out a ridiculous amount of damage with little investment. No need for crit stats, just build break and break the goddamn game. It's kinda like the hyper bloom of HSR if you think about it. Of course, foilers could power creep break characters by making more enemies with unbreakable weaknesses, but it would in turn destroy one of the core game mechanics that has been there since release. The break team increased the bottom line for damage significantly. And now all the new units have to compete with the level break meta set. So they have higher multipliers, but in turn, enemies have more HP. And so it is much harder to defeat these enemies with older units. And it doesn't only affect the endgame. The enemies in the world and in the story quests also get tankier, stronger, and more annoying to fight with older units. So if you want to enjoy your older characters in the story content, it will be harder and harder to do further down the line, as you will have to slowly chip away at the insanely bloated HP bars. So the problem isn't just power creep, it is the speed and the way it happened. A whole team type, old school hypercarry team, fell off a cliff in a very short period of time, and any of the new DPS from version 2 is leagues above the old carries, to the point when vertical investment is pointless. Why pull for Danahan's cons if Rappa completely outclasses a highly invested inhibitor Lune? And I didn't even touch upon how broken the newer supports are. Robin and Sunday are absolutely busted. They have so much utility, so many buffs. Imagine how insane the units that will release to replace them are going to be. So the power creep exists. It's rather quick, but why is this a problem? How can this affect player satisfaction? Why don't these whiny kids just ignore the endgame? Well, because the endgame is the significant part of the permanent content, maybe. To answer this question, let's address what contributes to gameplay satisfaction in your classical regular RPG games. Since HSR is actually advertised as an RPG, the answer is simple, it's gradual progression. In the beginning you're a regular schmuck, you can die to a rat. You level up, get new abilities, get more powerful, feel good about yourself, feel good about defeating enemies you used to struggle with, and take on even more powerful foes, and so on. As a result of time and effort you put in the game, you feel more powerful, and it feels good. In gacha games this mechanism is already broken, since you can instantly become overpowered by putting enough money into the game, or you can struggle for a while without feeling any increase in power and satisfaction from it if your gacha luck sucks, for example. And all your progress can be rendered useless if you take a little break and then come back and all your teams are no longer relevant, you cannot clear endgame, and you have to rebuild your account from scratch. The faster the power creep gets, the more it feels like a constant uphill battle that gives you no time to enjoy the units you have already built. It brings nothing but anxiety if you aren't a whale. No wonder a huge chunk of HSR community is so obsessed with the meta and getting the right units and avoiding getting the wrong units, because getting the wrong units can mess up your account for a while, and it can make a considerable chunk of permanent game content straight up painful to complete. So it would be nice to at least have some time to enjoy the units and teams you've built, like at least a year, maybe. When they are rendered obsolete too quickly, it feels unfair and unsatisfying. And of course you can blame customers for getting the wrong units that are quickly power crept, but it's the company that released said units in the first place. And it's the company that chose to power creep these units so fast. And it can be hard to make the right choice with fast meta shifts and abundance of new characters. Players don't have the gift of foresight to predict what's going to happen several patches down the line, and even leaks might not go this far. So you basically have to look at leaks and listen to the content creators. But they are just people too. They can't see this far into the future and they can be wrong about their predictions. So in the end, you can only rely on your own judgment. Quite a few people hyped up Zaylee in the beginning when we were all clueless. But her resurgence mechanic quickly became almost useless with enemy HP bloat, and Jin Yuan turned out to be the unit that made a comeback a long time after his release. Like everyone hyped up Silverwolf, and she was actually good at the time, but later supports turned out to be more versatile. Like so many people hyped up Sparkle, who is pretty broken for skill point hungry hyper carries, but these team comps have become less relevant, and so did she. It was the fastest support power creep in history, since Robin is a better pick for most teams now, and she gives better buffs to the whole team and advances the whole team forward. The other thing contributing to this issue in HSR is the speed with which new 5-star units release. It's 2 5-stars every patch consistently. Patches with reruns on the second half are a rarity. There is little time to breathe and save up for low spenders, especially since the characters that are good in one team comp can often release in consecutive patches, leaving no time to save up and prepare and contributing to FOMO. For example, Aventurine and Robin came in consecutive patches and it was pretty hard to get them both if you have bad gacha luck. There is also a considerable lack of 4 stars. The recent 4 stars were pretty good, but there are so few of them. The lack of good 4 stars makes for more expensive teams, as you don't even have decent stand-ins for most 5-star characters that you can use until you get the limited units. And we haven't gotten any decent 4-star Harmony characters for a while, because Harmony is the most broken path in game, and they want you to pull for 5-star supports. And we'll see more and more meta teams that consist only of 5 stars. The go-to follow-up attack teams, the Fart team, consists of 4 5-star units. 2 of them are DPS that need decent crit stats, so it's also a lot of relic farming. The Super Break team has viable free-to-play friendly options, but if you want to use the Remembrance Trailblazer, the only viable replacement for Harmony Trailblazer is a 5-star unit. This game needs more good 4-star supports that can reduce the team building costs, and these supports should at least stay viable for some time and not get instantly replaced by 5-star analogs that are leagues above. Like Hanya, who didn't even have the time to breathe before she was completely outclassed by Sparkle. And let's not forget that power creep goes against the other important aspect of gacha games, which is waifu gaming. You know, choosing and playing characters you like, either because of their animations, playstyle, or personality. Even if your favorite is super strong on release, you won't be able to enjoy them for too long. So you can either get and build your favorites, or be good in the endgame and feel powerful. But not both at the same time. You are entitled if you want both. Horrors will go bankrupt if they fulfill your outrageous demands. How dare you ask them for this? Some people might say that you can do vertical investment, just get better supports, add-ons, light codes. But vertical investment is a losing game. The diminishing returns will be insane, since for the same price you spent to get a few copies of the old 5-star, you could build half a new meta team that would outperform them in every bit of content. And the same supports that you got for that old unit would be even more efficient in new teams. So this is why power creep in HSR is a pretty noticeable issue for so many players, and it negatively affects the game experience. And ever since Penacony, it seems to be getting worse and worse. Of course, horrors might slow down the power creep in version 3, but why would they? As when the company sees that predatory practices work and everyone is fine with them, they will double down. Things will get worse. And when the company implements more predatory practices, everyone loses in the end. Free-to-play and low spenders can't keep up with ever-changing meta. Whales have to spend more money to get the same result, as the power creep keeps speeding up. So I don't understand why defend the company and enable them to get more money by doing less for their community. The only ones who might win are the content creators, who make meta-analyses and guides for those new, overpowered units that are 100% must-pull. You cannot complete the game without them. As for horrors, this turn towards predatory practices is not only limited to HSR. It also happens in Genshin. This game has lived without significant power creep for years, and it was successful. But now they are adding more and more units that have straight-up better multipliers than the older ones. And for the first time ever, they limit the Archon's full potential to the teams that have other characters from the same region. Of course, the situation is not as bad as in HSR, but it is a tendency. In version 5.3, they run 2 new limited units in the first half of the patch, while all the main events are locked in the second half. They've never done this before. This is an obvious attempt at milking players and playing on FOMO, since reruns in Genshin can take more than a year. And why would they stop if everyone is still happy with the game and spends more money on the Archon banner? I won't speak for DZZ since the game is still in its honeymoon phase, but based on the game design, it has very high potential for intense power creep further down the line. What I want to say is that Hoivers clearly intend on milking their player base more, and if you let them do it, if you fall for the predatory practices, if you start spending more, if you defend them everywhere on social media, they will have no reason to stop. And in the final part of this video, I'd like to talk about how messed up our attitude towards predatory monetization practices is in this community. Because maybe we like being milked and treated like crap. We often forget how much money horrors actually make with how little quality they put in some of their games. Genshin Impact has been stagnating for so long, yet it still makes a shitload of money. People complain about character designs, exploration creep, HP bloat, but then proceed to shower horror with money and pull for the new units. In HSR they refuse for the life of them to make an engaging story that doesn't waste the player's time, with hours upon hours of pointless dialogue and lore dumps. And they can't be bothered to add animations in the dialogue, instead of a few basic poses that I'm sick of looking at. Despite all the issues, in 1 month Hoivers can make as much money as you need to develop a good single-player RPG. For example, Baldur's Gate 3 cost around $100 million to develop. A full, long RPG with lots of dialogue choices, where goddamn Red has more personality than some of the paid gacha characters in horror games. Firefly banner made $92 million, according to Sensory Tower at least. And this is on mobile only. Of course, development and maintenance costs are a thing, but I'm sure they have enough money to maintain their games, pay their employees, and develop more projects. Yet they still seek to increase profits by leaning more into predatory practices. They just want all the money in the world, I guess. This is so amusing how some people say that horror games are failing while they're actually doing pretty well. Their profits are just dwarfed by the shitload of money horrors pull in, and they could have gone the full predatory route too, but they choose to balance their games better instead of chasing endless profits. Powercreep exists in PGR too, but it's slower and more reasonable than an HSR, and you can see that they are putting a lot of efforts into improving their games, and they catch flack for it. Because the numbers aren't high enough, some idiots are seriously out there bashing a company for not milking its player base enough. It's so messed up that we judge games by the amount of money they make, when the easiest way for a gacha game to make money is to get the players hooked and then double down on power creep and increase FOMO, which reduces the overall quality of the game experience, because constantly planning your pools several patches in advance and chasing the meta that changes every 6 months and not being able to play as your favorite characters because they become unusable trash in less than a year is not very fun. We should really stop praising companies for exploiting their player base more. In the end, power creep is not your fault. There is no ultimate anti-power creep strategy, even if some people want you to believe there is. Because the company can do whatever they want with the balance. They have full control of the units they release. And if they choose to make a character irrelevant a month after this character comes out, they absolutely can. If you are free to play or a low spender, the only anti-power creep strategy is to stop caring about power creep and trying to catch up to the meta. It's a game you can't win. And if not being able to clear endgame with good scores with the units you've spent a lot of time building is detrimental to your game enjoyment, it's okay to take a step back. And if you care about the game and want it to be the best version of itself, it's okay to ask more from a multi-billion-dollar company. So this is all I wanted to say. Take care, spend responsibly, and have fun in your favorite games. Bye bye.